County, Arizona Sheriff Mark Daniels. Sheriff, your reaction to all of this? Should we get the national emergency authorities out to the border, deploy those authorities? Because we've got all these dangerous gangs and cartel activity at the border.
Well, good morning, Cheryl. And the answer to that is yes, we should. We have created a crime scene in our country based on an open border that's no longer just a crisis at our border. It's a crisis in every community right now. And this is intended. I mean, we've opened up the border based on executive orders. And I would debate and argue with John Kirby in the fact that under Title VIII, which is federal law, states if you come across the border illegally, you're automatically expelled. No questions asked. We have set that rule of law aside to let them in. So this is well intended to what's going on our border.
Well, you say that catch and release has allowed violent gang members and career criminals into communities like yours.
Well, that's a true statement, Cheryl. When you ask any border patrol agent, they could talk to the media, they tell you the exact same thing. We have had catch and release for the last 3.5 years. And here's the hardest part that's hard for me as a sheriff that works the border is when President Biden comes out, or you see media reports from John Kirby and others that say, they're doing everything they can. Those are feel-good headlines that like their hands are tied. Let's not forget, President Biden took away all the executive orders, using executive orders to open the border. He has the authority to enforce the rule of law and secure this border. And I would say this, ask any victim of fentanyl poisoning, anybody that's been a victim of the illegals that are in this country, that were allowed in this country, what they would say about having the border secured. We got to do a better job of securing that border.
Well, speaking of the border, two questions. First, I want to ask you if you've seen a bigger influx in Arizona, because Governor Abbott in Texas has pretty much shut down what he was dealing with there. I'm wondering if those migrants are more flooding into your area, and it sounds like they are. But the other thing is that Mike Burrell, so he's the former CIA deputy director, he sounded the alarm on the heightened terror threat at the border. And he wrote this op-ed. He says it's the terrorism warning lights are blinking red again. And he says the stated intentions of terrorist groups, the growing capabilities they have demonstrated in recent successful and failed attacks around the world, point to an uncomfortable but unavoidable conclusion. The U.S. faces a serious threat of a terrorist attack in the months ahead. And John Kirby admitting the White House is watching. Listen to him.
Former acting CIA Director Michael Morrell wrote in Foreign Affairs Today, the terrorism warning lights are blinking red again. Do you agree with that assessment?
Certainly, we would absolutely say unequivocally that we've got to keep our eye on the terrorist threat.
Sheriff?
Well, let me say this to you, Sheriff. First of all, we have seen no change down here when it comes to making the border safer. In fact, just the opposite. We continue every day to see border crimes here in Cochise County. With work with my fellow sheriffs will tell you the same thing. We're on the tip of this spear of crime in this country when it comes to being vulnerable. 9/11 taught us something, and sadly we've set that aside. That history's been set aside. It amazes me that anybody, as an elected official, all the way to the President of the United States, would say it's okay to have an open border, what we're seeing in this country. It alarms me that political parties are more important than the people that we serve. We got to get this border back under control, make it manageable.
Certainly the cartel activity that we've seen is incredulous at this point, and making really, you are a border town, but now many American cities are becoming border towns. So the New York Post is reporting out of here that the suspected rapist and murderer of this young Maryland mother, he tried illegally crossing the border 3 times. He was turned away, but then he evaded authorities on the 4th attempt, they say. I mean, do you think that whether it's Rachel Morin, whether it's Laken Riley, whether it's the NYPD police officers we saw shot in my city, is all of this preventable?
100% preventable. One of the main things any elected official, whether you're a sheriff, mayor, governor, or president of the United States, or U.S. Congress, your main priority is to protect your citizens. And right now, we are not doing that. Let's just be honest here. And this is where I think it's been lost in the dialogue. The honesty coming out of Washington, D.C. right now, in the fact that they failed to engage it, they failed to acknowledge it, and they failed to prioritize it, which is the ingredients of the tragedies we're seeing in this country, which is only going to get worse. We know it. the almost 2 million gotaways, that's nominal number, the people that we've allowed in this country that we can't vet for criminal histories, are only, what we're seeing is just only the tip. It's only going to get worse. And I cannot believe we're not united on that.
My colleague Joe Pinian's got a question for you, Sheriff.
Sheriff, to that particular point, obviously, it appears to most people paying attention, the increasing number of people on the terrorist watch list that are being apprehended coming across our border. We remember that it was basically just a handful of madmen that took this country to its knees on 9/11, and we made a vow never to forget. From your perspective, looking at what has happened there on the southern border, from the DOJ suing the state of Arizona for the shipping containers, the DOJ suing the state of Texas for putting up the buoys, how is it possible that somebody like John Kirby stands up there with a straight face and tries to place the blame for the unmitigated disaster on somebody else?
And that's the most frustrating thing we see as sheriffs. We see it as community members. My community talks to me all the time about this. Is the fact that their non-apologetic application here to say, hey, we have not done a good job. We have to do a better job to protect you in this country, and quit doing the blame game. That's not saving lives in this country. So it's frustrating, it's upsetting to see that, because you're the president of the United States, you're a global leader and most powerful person in the world, and you can't secure our own border. We have to prioritize America first on this.